Hello and welcome to the solo experience where hopefully my mic is fixed and not a catastrophic crackle one after the other. If it is, please let me know in chat. I'm probably going to delete that last video because of all the crackles because it's unbecoming. So we're going to talk a little bit about, I think, the same things that we talked about last time, but just as highlights. I also want to talk about automation and remotes. We're going to talk about HD Web Remote. We're going to talk about these little relays because I just replaced one. And usability and how I think it is a big part of room design and things that you really need to consider. And I don't think people consider them enough. It's really important, especially if you want other people to use the theater. So let's jump into the topic of previous. Please let me know if my mic is cracking because that's really important. It shouldn't. I restarted everything, so I think I'm good. But if it is, let me know and I will hate myself and we can redo everything. But talking on yesterday's topic, room design, and getting on my pulpit again, it is very important, and we're not going to stay on this for nearly as long as we did last time, but it is very important to buy equipment for the room. Figure out the use case of the room. Figure out how the room is going to be used. Design it from a foundational level, and then pick equipment that fits into that room. We'll go back and I'll redo previous said video, but I just wanted to reiterate that. So that's really all we're going to talk about on that topic. Now, let's get into remotes and relays. We're not going to get too in-depth in this, but let me show you some stuff. How do I do this? Does that work better? Does not work better. Can I do that? There we go. All right. So you guys can see this, I think. Does this make it bigger? That makes it bigger. Okay. So this is my server in my house. This is HT Web Remote. So this is the main interface that comes up. What you can do with this is you can add a bunch of devices. So this is running on a server. You can control it with any app that has an iPad or that has a browser. And you tell it, we'll get to that bit in a minute. You tell it what devices are connected. So these are all the devices that are controllable by HT Web Remote. Nick Olroy did this, and he did a fantastic job. I wish it had some features, but it's entirely usable, and it's easy enough to use without explaining it to my 7-year-old, to my 15-year-old, or my wife. They can use it, and it just runs on an iPad that stays in the theater. So it's got all these devices. You've got Storm, Trinov, the Griffin. This is the HDMI matrix. This is the Kaleidoscape. There's an Magnetar, which is running on an Oppo driver. Philips Hue lighting. All of these Ascendos, these guys, and the Storms here, these are all relays, and I'll talk about them in a bit. But they're all 25 amp relays, and even these Trinovs down here, these amp 16s, these are all relays. And then you've got the Apple TV. So all of these devices get controlled by HT Web Remote, and I tell them the device type, the IP address, and a bunch of other specific driver options that are needed. And then once that's done, you come into edit remotes, and this is where you actually design the remotes. So this is the remote that comes on the front page. So if I push this button, what happens is the entire theater turns on. So if we look at this, if I push that button, it executes this macro. All of these commands get done. So in order to turn on the MadVR Experience Center, you would have to go through and do every single one of these actions in order to get it how I have it when it turns on. Set the inputs, turn on all the devices, set the input and outputs on the matrix, wait X amount of time to make sure things are powering on. You would have to turn on all the relays, all that stuff individually. But this goes through and does it all for me. It takes a couple minutes because I'm not turning everything on at the same time in order to make sure I don't have a current and rush. But this goes through. It starts by turning on the lights, which is great. Philips Hue turns on. The projector turns on. Then the Storm turns on. Then the Kaleidoscape turns on. When the Storm turns on, it sends a 12-volt trigger to the Trinov, turning it on. Kaleidoscape turns on. Then all the relays start turning on. And these relays are for the amplifiers. So then once the amplifiers are on, then it goes through because it's used that as a buffer. So then it goes through and it sets all of the inputs. So it's setting the Christie input, the storm volumes, the zone volumes, the presets. It's now changing the HDMI matrix input and outputs. And then it's waiting another 80,000 milliseconds to ensure that the turn-off turns on, because the turn-off takes a long time to turn on. Then it sets the turn-off volume, and it sets the turn-off profile. And once that's done, it's done. Right? So that turns everything on. Then, if I want to turn it off, it executes this command. Turns everything off, turns all the relays off. And then one of the coolest things that I like is it turns the lights on. So when I turn the theater off, it turns the lights on, and then it'll wait. So it'll run through the entire turn off macro, and then it'll wait for 5 minutes. And then it will turn the lights off. And this means that I can just walk out of the room. It turns the lights on so everybody can leave, and then it shuts down the room, gives you ample time to exit, and then it turns the lights off. And that's super cool. The more you can automate and the more you can not worry about things, the easier the room becomes to use. The less you have to think about it, the more you're going to use it, the more other people imperatively are going to use it, and the more enjoyable the space is going to be. It's going to be less frustrating, and it just works. And this program just works. As long as your devices are reachable, it works. It's very, very reliable, and I really appreciate that. So that's the power on and power offs. Now let's talk a little bit about actual control. So if we go to audio, this is one of the main interfaces that I use, and this controls the turn off and the storm simultaneously. Jeffrey Fry, yes, this can work on any hardware that has a browser. As long as it has a browser, it'll work. Yeah, it'll work with JVC projectors. Oh, you're asking, does it work with any, like, controlling anything? Most things it does. Like, he doesn't have a built-in integration for Shelly relays, which is what these are. So this is a Shelly relay. But I'm able to use the Shelly API in order to control these. I can send web commands from his remote to this to control them. And it was super easy to implement. You have to know kind of what you're doing. Like, it's definitely beneficial to have an IT background to understand like how these commands are working. But you could certainly work your way through it. And there is an install guide in order to get this stuff operational. I won't say that this is for everybody because it's not like a plug and play. It is absolutely needing configuration, and it's not the most user-friendly for people that aren't involved in technology. But if you have an understanding of like your own server or NAS and stuff, you could get your way through this. So I can't say it's for everybody, but it is entirely, entirely helpful. So back to the web remote. So this is the audio remote, and this is exactly how it looks on the iPad or on any browser. It's reactive, so it'll scale. These volume commands I have programmed to send to both turn off and storm. So if we click on this command, it'll show you what it's doing. So it's actually setting the volume for the storm, for the turn off, and for zone 2 on the storm. And I have to do zone 1 and zone 2 on the storm because it's zone 2 is for infrasonics. So it's doing both. I push one button and it controls both things in the theater. If I toggle up volume one notch, so if I do this, it sends that command to all three interfaces at the same time. Now, one drawback that I'd like Nick to implement is for it to be able to get data back from the device. It's only one way. It's not a two-way system right now, so there's nothing coming back. So I can't see what volume it's actually at unless I have the OSD on. So there is that, which is why I implemented these. I don't use the incremental volumes very much. I just send these volume state commands. So if I want it to be -40, it sends that command. If I want it to be -30, it sends that command. If I want to dim and not fully mute and do -20, add it on, it'll send that command. So I don't really use these. I mainly use these. So I know exactly what the volume is that's being set. And then I can boost and cut all of my infrasonic stuff, both on the Storm and the Trinnov. And then I can interact with all of the presets. So I can push this button. This side is the Storm, this side is the Trinnov. So if I push these buttons, it's changing the profile that the Storm is running for audio for the calibration. This one's doing the Trinnov, and then these toggle for which particular processor is active at any time. And you can see that if I didn't have access to this remote, which I've done Control 4, I've done Crestron, I've done Savant in the room, this is way better than all of them. It's not as polished, but the granularity is the part that gets me, and the ease of setup. A lot of the Control 4, the Savant, the Crestron, they're really antiquated systems behind the scenes. They may showcase that, on the remote side that they're not very antiquated, but they are actually on a fundamental and foundational level. They are very antiquated and old systems. The back end hasn't been updated very much. It's still pretty old. And this is very simple. It does exactly what you want. I'd like it to be a little more polished, but it does. You're interacting with the remote for not very long. So why does it really matter in the grand scheme of things how pretty it looks? It gets the job done, which is fantastic. So this gets the job done for volume. But now if we look at an individual device like Kaleidoscape, this is the Kaleidoscape remote. So if you push the Kaleidoscape remote, it brings this up. And if I touch this button on the top, it changes all of the needed inputs so that Kaleidoscape appears and is functioning. This is how you interact with it. You've got the movie wall stuff. But down here, on the same remote, I've got the volume commands, and then I've got light control. So if I need to, I can tell it, hey, do this with the lights all on the same lighting page. I don't have to flip back and forth. I don't have to change anything. It's all on the same page, which is hugely convenient. Is there a way to use a simple remote for adjusting volume? Yeah, that's exactly what this is. So I think it's delayed. The chat is delayed. So that's exactly what this is. You can make it as complicated or simple as you want. But there is no set remotes. There's no templates. You've got to go through and create everything for yourself. The AVS forum thread is very helpful. People will post examples that can be very helpful in what you're doing. But this page, like Kaleidoscape, or if we look at Apple TV, or we look at like Magnetar or any of that stuff, all the remotes are laid out the same. Like I've laid them out all the same so that if somebody's switching between them, the functions are in the exact same spot. They're interacting with the systems in different ways, but functionally for the user, they're the same. Can you create UI elements? You can. So you can use links in order to do that. I have never done that. There are people that create some wild and crazy remotes on the AVS forum page. I have never done it. It is possible. It is possible. You meant a physical remote. Is there a way to use a simple remote for just adjusting? Not that I'm aware of. So this is kind of fake. He's asking if there's a remote that can do this. Not to this level that I'm aware of. No physical remote that I have found is this granular. You may be able to find something that you could program to send these commands, but I'm sure you could figure out a way. Like you could have a Windows remote that would send commands and then would trigger these functions. I'm sure there's a way you could do it. I just have not investigated that. Because of the level of flexibility this provides, I'm sure there's a way to do it. You could theoretically do it. I just haven't looked into that. Classy Tech Calibration says, I'm working in commercial AV now as a designer and programmer, got certified. Crestron is definitely behind them, especially QSys. It's so Crestron, I won't say is behind them. It's behind them in an ease of use standpoint, but the granularity you can do with Crestron in comparison to all of them, besides maybe QSys, I don't think it's above them because of the things that you can do. But the back end of Crestron is so old that it is a serious pain in the ass. And Crestron Home does not have the same granularity that Crestron Simple does. It just doesn't. But Simple is way more complicated. I couldn't set up Simple. It's too complicated. I mean, I guess I could if I learned it, but I have no interest in that. It does a lot, but you're right. The UI is dumb. So Jeffrey Fry, although we have an iPad and we rarely use them, move them around, and don't want a super bright screen down there in the theater, does the scale well enough for a phone? Yeah, it does. You could absolutely use one. Let me show you. So I turn the theater on all the time on my phone. Let me show you. Boom. So there's the power. So there is this one. Easy peasy, easy to use. It's up to you how you implement it, but it scales normally. It's reactive. So you could absolutely use that. You don't need an iPad. Just do it on your phone. I have one in there because it's always in there and I don't want to be activating a browser on my phone all the time. So I just pick up the iPad and if other people are using the theater, that's not me, or I have people in there that want to use it, they can just pick up the iPad and do it. So yeah, it definitely scales very easily. C3 Orion says, I use Home Assistant for controlling my home theater. It has integrations for most devices. Yeah, it does. And I actually use Home Assistant as well. I had to bring that in for use with Apple TV because Apple TV has a proprietary backend that Home Assistant utilizes. I just prefer this for the ease of new integrations like Shelly. It just works really well. So I use both. There's both. Home Assistant runs on this server as well. I actually use Home Assistant to interact with Kaleidoscape to bring the lights up and down when I'm playing and pausing. So it's doing both. We're using both at the same time. Jeffrey Fry says, this will be my Christmas break project. It's a great piece of kit. It's not the most user-friendly to get set up, but once you get it going, it works very well. Home Assistant is easy. That's not hard. Not hard at all. So if you guys have questions, drop them in. This is HT Web Remote. I can show you. We can go to the web page just so you can see it. So Nick has a not WebG remote, Web Remote, a GitHub, and this is it. So these are some of the remotes that Nick's done. You can put in separators. These are the natively directly supported devices, unofficially supported devices. So if we look at other device support and go to that link, somebody was asking about JVC. Those are there. These are not natively supported. You can add things outside of this using the URL or other types of web call commands. So you're telling it when you configure it how you want to communicate. So I'm telling it, hey, I'm communicating via URLs. Here's my auth token. And there's different ways to communicate. You've got IP, you've got URL, you've got packets. There's a bunch of different ways that you can communicate. So the previous setup ones, like the directly supported devices, are ones that he has built in the communication measures for. The non-supported ones, you have to do some back-end stuff in order to support. And the non-supported ones fully, you have to figure out how they need to communicate. So in their APIs, if they've got good APIs like Shelly, they should tell you the types, how you need to encapsulate a command in order for it to be supported. So that is really it on the topic of remotes. I'm not going to go too much into it because I hate most remotes. I've been through most remotes and most of them suck, which is why I finally bit the bullet and went the path of the HT Web Remote. Most of them just won't control the Mad VR Experience Center. It's too complicated. They can't do it. There's too much stuff going on for it to be able to do. And this remote allows me to do it very simply. I think this is going to be a short stream, which is okay because I have to go record a video with Peter Aylett next about sub integration. For anybody that missed the stream with Jonathan and I, we did announce the VIP stuff for M-Wave. So if you go to midwestavexperience.net, the tickets are live both for general admission and VIP, and they are being sold. My theater, I think, is approaching being sold out. Jonathan's, he's got some, most of the other guys have some left because they have more seats. Mine does not have the same number of seats, so mine is approaching being sold out. So if you have any interest in going to VIP, I highly suggest you get those in soon. There are specific times available for those. So if you have any interest in VIP, head over to midwestavexperience.net, go to the VIP tab, and it can get you taken and inform you on what the theaters are, what the time slots are, so on and so forth. And there's enough time between all of them that you can travel without any issue between any of the theaters. So that's not a problem, regardless of what order you do them in. There's a maximum of 3 per day, if I remember correctly. I think it's 3 per day. And then Friday has 2. Does it have any way to request features? He's talking about the remote. You can post on the AVS forum thread or in the GitHub. But again, midwestavexperience.net. If you guys want to come to M-Wave, suggest you get those tickets, if anything, because it helps me push to vendors. Hey, there's already this many people coming. We sold 21 VIP tickets yesterday or the day before. I think it was Tuesday. We sold 21 VIP tickets, and pretty quick. So they are selling pretty rapidly. So if you have any want or desire to go to the theaters, I highly suggest you get those knocked out. So if anybody has any questions before we close up the day, feel free to write them in chat. I see Steven does. So Steven asks, Ryan, what do you think the new Christie CP4415M and CP14420M projectors, they could be game changers for priced correctly? I have no idea. I do not know anything about these. CP4415M. Christie CP4415M. What is this? Hybrid laser. So they're commercial projectors. It's a hybrid between RGB and phosphor. Does it say anything about 15,000 lumens, 6,001 contrast, which is accurate? So are these replacements for the M series, or are these commercial variants of the M series? Wonder if they're native 4K? I don't know anything about these projectors. What's the other one? 14420? Christie 14420M? That doesn't show anything. Are you sure that's written right? Maybe you meant 4420M. Let's try that. 4420M. There it is. All right. Is this a 20,000? Yeah. Yeah, those could be. Absolutely. It's a 3-chip. I don't know anything about these at all. They're definitely smaller than the Griffin. They look to be about the same size as the M4K. I don't know anything about them. I will have to ask about those. I'm gonna send an email after this call or this video and see what these do. Less than 47 dBA, so that really doesn't tell you much as far as noise. Can do 4K 120. What do they do for what do they need for power? 10 amp max, 15 amp max, but it needs 240 to run on 15 amp max. Okay. That's probably for efficiency and heat. So that is beneficial. Huh. That's exciting. That's great. Especially the contrast in the laser life, they say over 50,000 hours. Now the Griffin is 50,000 hours and you'd lose 10% of your brightness if you ran it at 60%, which is insane. So I wonder if it's the same for that. I'd assume it's similar, but that's still fantastic. Yeah, Torsteiners, it is their commercial line, but you can get them. Barco does similar things, but that's exciting. New projectors are great. I always appreciate new things on the market. And a hybrid, I wonder how that'll work, or if it's even conducive for residential. Be interesting if that was 6,000 to 1 native without the ultra high contrast lens. That'd be huge, because then if you go ultra high contrast, it goes up significantly. That'd be significant. All right, we'll have to look into that. Thanks for the heads up. I did not know anything about that. But we'll just wrap it up because I have another video that I have to record in a little bit. So I've got 2 guys coming in to take a look at the theater. They'll be here today. I got to pick them up at the airport and they leave Sunday. And that is an offer that goes for anybody watching. If you want to reach out to me, you have any interest in coming out to see the Mad VR Experience Center, typically it only costs you a flight. I'll come get you. Typically I host people. They can stay with me. You get to experience the space. We go to get to eat some barbecue, and then you get to go home. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to reach out. If you need any equipment, happy to help there as well. Send a message to ryan@ascendav.net. I'll put that QR code up, and you can reach out. I've got some Storm Audio stuff. I've got some Epsons that all need homes. The Storm Audio stuff is demos from Cedia. The Epsons are new in box. Just reach out and I can give you out the door pricing and we can get you taken care of. But if that's on your to-do list, feel free to scan that code and we'll go from there. Jeffrey says, last AVS Forum podcast with Peter was my favorite so far. It was good. Peter's really good at interacting. He does a lot of courses for CDS, so he's really, really good at conveying information. He's a good guest. Jeffrey was great too. But we'll wrap it up there. So if you need anything, feel free to reach out. Not sure when the next video will be. Probably be Monday, but we'll go from there. Enjoy your home theater journeys and stay safe out there.